I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. Well, you're in New York, right? Are you in Manhattan?
I live in New York. I mean, I live in New Jersey, Fort Lee area, but this is like 5 minutes away from New York. So, and I work in New York. So, New York is my city.
Okay, all right, got it. I am having a great chat, as you can tell already, with the Georgian American composer, and we're going to talk about that. George Oakley, concert pianist and composer, I want to say, born in 1979, and I keep thinking, my God, you're a kid. Compared to me, that's crazy. We're going to be speaking about the Naxos American Classics 2018 CD release of music by George Oakley, chamber music. It's called Wanderer. Chamber works of George Oakley, and it is a world premiere recording, 2018. Five incredible pieces, chamber pieces. A toccata for piano. We're going to talk about 2008 composed a sonata for cello and piano, by the way, also just an absolutely gorgeous piece, 2013. Four songs on Shakespeare sonnets. We're going to spend a little time there for soprano and piano from 2011. Remembrance for clarinet and piano from 2014. A very significant, I think, work for clarinet and piano. And an unbelievable sonata fantasia for piano that is really meaty would be the best I could think of right now to speak of. And the soloists on this CD, let me list them, and as we go through the pieces, maybe you can tell me how you met some of these people. Naomi Louisa O'Connell, soprano. Anton Rist, incredible clarinetist, principal clarinetist of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. You apparently wrote the piece for him a couple years before he got that position, if I've got my years right.
Correct. And I am very proud of that because I can say that I discovered Anton way before that world discovered him.
Ah,
So
that's
I
great.
think
Superb clarinetist and really wonderful piece for clarinet and piano that clarinets
why
need to be.
this piece. He is the reason why I wrote this piece, and I particularly wrote the piece for him. So that's, I think, worth to mention.
Lucky Anton. And then we have a cellist, Lizzie Ramishvili. I hope I'm getting close to pronouncing the Georgian name correctly, presumably from your years in Georgia, friends from Georgia. Angelina Gadalia, pianist, and Tamar Milaladadze.
Mikeladze.
Thank you very much. Is that Italian or what?
That's Georgian
Oh,
also.
because I know the Ishvili, I know the Ishvili stuff on most Georgian names, but the Adze is hard. So you'll forgive me my shattering of these pronunciations, and you'll help us when we get to these pieces pronounce these poor people's names correctly. Just a quick one about composer pianist George Oakley, Georgian born. American composer. I'm going to ask you about your name in just a minute here because it's fascinating. I'm sure you're going to tell us quite a story because obviously Oakley is not Georgian. So we're looking at some reverse migration or something going on. Graduate of the Tbilisi State Conservatoire as a kid, Steinhardt School of the New York University, studying film scoring. I find that very interesting. And studying with, is this the son of Norman? Justin
That's
Delajoyo?
that's right. Yes.
Incredible. And also with Robert Aldridge and
That,
your kind of mentor, Richard Daniel Poor, fabulous American composer. Um, Now let's just get things going. Tell me the story of Oakley in Georgia.
I would be happy to say a few things about that. First of all, let me thank you for inviting me in this interview series that you make and that you do. Is absolutely amazing. I think world needs that. World today needs support of art, and that's what you do is basically that's what it is. You bring out the art that we need so much. Thank you so much. This is really something very meaningful. Now short story about my name. I just want to tell you I am the third generation that was born in Georgia, and the first who came in Georgia was my great-grandfather. His name was Nicholas Oakley. He was working in BP, as far as I know, in Azerbaijan. That was just before the revolution enters into that post-Soviet Union area. And while the whole chaos was about to emerge, of course, everyone had to go back to their places, all incomers. And my great grandfather was not an exception, so he was going back home, of course, through the Black Sea, and he had to pass Georgia. Now, imagine what happens while he goes through that. He falls in love in a Georgian girl there. He falls in love so deeply, so passionately that he doesn't go, he stays there, and he lets everybody leave. And that's how Oakley ended up in Georgia country. And then my first Georgian Oakley born was my grandfather. He was the first one. And then my father, and that's how it brings to me here the third generation.
And how many musicians in your family, if any, before you?
Well, that's interesting. I am if we take the Oakley side, I am the only musician because my father is scientist, his father is scientist, and what happens beyond, I have no idea. From my mom's side, also, I don't recall any musicians, but there is Eteri Anjaparidze and Zurab Anjaparidze, very world-known pianist and singer, tenor, Zurab Anjaparidze. They are also connected to my family because my grandfather married a woman, Iveta Bakhtadze, who was also married to Zurab Anjaparidze and whose daughter is Eteri Anjaparidze. So that's how we are a little bit connected. So music is in my family, we can say. So I am connected to music through that part. I can say that.
Wow, complex, eh? Yeah. Let me just list the five pieces, chamber pieces on this. I think I may have, but let's just make sure. This a toccata for piano that we're going to discuss. Incredible work, from 2008. A sonata for cello and piano that people talk about. Four songs of Shakespeare from Shakespeare's sonnets. Remembrance for clarinet and piano, and this Sonata Fantasia for piano. So two virtuoso solo piano works that reflect your own skills fabulously. A glorious clarinet, really, Remembrance is actually a beautiful sonata, I think, really a one-movement kind of sonata. And the sonnets of Shakespeare that I want to ask you about in terms of language. In other words, it's a beautiful overview of your work. This is the only work that I know, but how many other chamber works? Was it tough making a decision? How many, did you have some choices you had to make in terms of choosing these five?
Well, for some reason, all these works that you have on the CD is actually, let's say, in my first compositional period. Because I kind of collected these pieces naturally. I didn't think about whether, so for some reason it happened by itself, and that's all somehow, we are written in that period of time. Let's say this is period of time before I moved to New Jersey, where I live right now in Fort Lee. So that's a New York period of time when I lived in New York. So I didn't have to actually choose one over another. Quite honestly, it just happened a little bit by itself. Because, first of all, I wanted to have those pieces mainly because I had these artists, you see, and they kind of inspired me so much that I wanted to record them. So it was for me easy to choose. It was not like music to choose. That would be impossible to do. I cannot choose my music from one to another. That's not something I can make that decision. But because I had those artists, I could make that decision.
So this is actually a CD of friends.
Yes, we can say
Is
that.
that fair to say?
That's right. Yes.
And we've talked about your I mentioned earlier that you, of course, graduating to Tbilisi. I hope I'm pronouncing the capital of Georgia, the state conservatoire there. But when at what point and why did you see on your sites New York City, or was it USA, or what was it that lured you to North America, if there was even a lure?
Well, what is the symbol of America? We are all see our dreams come true in this country, and everyone who comes in this country has some kind of dream. And I'm not an exception. I was coming in this country following my dream, which is to find myself as an artist, to help this some kind of a dream come true. That's the, I think, to me, best country and very comfortable place to be in. And I'm so happy after so many years I now been living here. I can only say that it's amazing. Really love. I love to be here. I love, and I'm very proud that my son is born here, and amazing country that helps art and artists. And I think that's a good example what I have accomplished only because of everything around is set very well for artists to accomplish.
And by the
Wherever
way, as an American myself, I'm very pleased and flattered that we still, as a country, are still, despite problems, especially in these days. But what Americans are, is welcoming and opening, and this idea that one can come to this country and make a life and work hard and have a life. It's still a vibrant message to the world. It's a beautiful thing
I
about America.
idea of it in this country is and will be always it's going to be infinite because it was born with this idea. The country itself is born with this idea, and now even when I reading other people talking about America, even people like Nikolai Rerich, amazing painter, who I currently read his writings. He talks about America, about the idea of America in such way it inspires me, and I feel so touched, that someone who lived so long ago could sense what I feel today, and this apart almost 100 years. All these writings coming from 100 years ago, and they are still relevant for today's day. So I think yes, it is like it was, and I believe it will be.
Wonderful. And by the way, have you achieved American citizenship? Or did you do that process, or how
I
is that?
did, and I'm happy I over this, and I don't have to go through that again anymore.
You mean the test about civil
It's not,
government and all that?
yeah, it's not an easy process. Let me tell you that. And if you ask anyone who had gone through that process, will confirm that that's not an easy process.
Right.
But I have gone through it, and I can say today that I am American citizen.
Marvelous. Let's talk a little bit before we kind of plunge into individual works. You and I spoke a bit ago, and I am encountering it so often, and I hear it from time to time in your music. This kind of jazz influence. It's not pervasive. It's just there. There's a touch of it here, a touch of it there, and then we're going to also talk about sort of the folk tune influences, the Georgian influences that I'm going to ask you about because I think I'm hearing them in your music. But what is it? How do you feel? How comfortable are you with this idea? This idea of jazz and classical music melding as Gunther Schuller has suggested years and years ago?
You see, I think the influence of jazz in classical music been in the world where I'm coming from already way before me. We can, for instance, talk about Shostakovich and his jazz suite. And there we can find the influence of jazz music. We can talk about Stravinsky and find jazz music in his compositions, right? So this is something that is there for many years. Why? Because to me, influence as such is something that you like and you respond to. So whether it's jazz, whether it's African American music, African folk music, or Asian music, or rock music, whatever music we hear around, and today we hear lots of music. Access is so simple. It's not like 20 years ago we had to go to libraries and search and look for music, and it took us weeks and weeks to find what we are looking for. Today it's one click of a button and we can hear whatever we want. So that brings so much possibilities, and we have access to an ocean of music. And of course, we like this, we like that. It becomes part of us. We cannot get rid of it. It's like becomes your part now. It's like your family, it's yours. And then it finds its way in your own art, whether you want or not. It's also, I think sometimes there is, to me, a little bit mistake understanding that influence means a weakness in art. Sometimes we hear that, which is not correct, because influence is something that appears whether you want it or not. Whatever you like, it becomes an influence to you. However, what is important is to remain your own self and have your own voice, whatever influence comes at you. You just have them and put on as a clothes. But behind that, it's still you. And if you, as an artist, can have that voice, that transcendence onto this world, then whatever influence is there, still going to be as a beautiful addition. And I think that's what is very, very important. And of course, jazz is not exception, because I love jazz. I, had to study, and I was so happy. That was one of my best lectures I received on jazz music in DePaul University in Chicago, which I studied, and I received the A, the grade, which means I did a good job with it. I love jazz music, and of course it shows here, there, and Toccata was deliberately the idea of blending jazz music into a classical music traditions. So here, and I think what is interesting about Toccata, that while you blend two things together, then it becomes ultimately something new. It's not jazz anymore. It's not classical in its own way. It's something third, something in between. And that's why I think it works in Toccata, because it's not traditional jazz piece. You cannot say that, but it's also not traditional classical piece either. So that's something new, I think.
Very well spoken, and also this third way, you've just really spoken to it very eloquently. It's not, there's another word for that phrase of Gunther Schuller's. It's just like this. I'm a a boring classicist, really. My whole training has been as a conductor. I was very, very fussy until my old age, when I finally began to, my eyes began to open about this. But the idea that Gunther Schuller's idea of this melding of things, and you've described it in many ways, as we'll discuss even Georgian folk tunes that I'm sure are in your music, um, that are there, but they're different, they're new, they're you, they're an expression of yourself, and so on.
I think here is very important to mention one important aspect that I think we all should be aware when we talk about like ideas, influence, mixing things up together to find something. It shouldn't be much rational, rather more emotional and rather on the level of senses. You see, because sometimes we are looking for something new and we start thinking about it, and when we think about it, the idea right away falls off. Everything falls off because it's not rational art.
Yeah.
Art is full of senses, and those senses are coming from heart. It doesn't come from mind or brain. So in that way, we need to be very, very clear to be sure that this is what we do really coming directly from heart. Then I am sure that it's gonna find its way out. Like in nature, when you see a stroke of river coming, it will always find its way to the ocean. We don't need to help it. Nature will lead it to the ocean. Same way, that river in us will lead it naturally to this idea that we feel needs to be born. I would say that way.
And you've touched on the idea of spontaneity. You've touched
Yes.
on the idea of genuineness. You've touched on the very important idea of getting out of our heads, getting
Yes.
away sometimes from this over intellectualizing of things. By the way, your music, or your compositions are extremely complex. So it's kind of interesting that I find a man that I'm speaking to here that has this wonderful theory, but obviously you are a complex composer. Your writing is very complex and and so on. So there is we're not going to dismiss intellectual process, but when
Yes,
people get too much in their head, go ahead. Sorry.
well, thanks about mentioning about this. However, I just want to add that this complexity is not something I trying to do. It's just for me. It's just a natural way of expressing my feelings, or this is how I speak. This is probably how I am. Set up, maybe also because it's based on the way I was brought up, the way in the culture I was raised. All these things come together because we are not only what we decide at the moment, but we are also what we are being, as through all these years, where we are born, how we are raised, what music we are attached, and that complexity probably has to do with also Georgian folk, because Georgian folk is very complex music itself, very multi-voiced structures and layers, and it's so unique in that sense, in that way. It's almost unbelievable when you hear how these voices could find and interact themselves. But it is what it is. It comes naturally. It's a folk. No mind was there thinking how it should be done. It happened like this, and probably it influenced on my formation, and it finds its way out in that way. That's how I can explain.
Wonderful. And I wanted to ask you also just about, in terms of just the piano works, for example, as a concert pianist. I think I asked you before we started, and the piano pieces you've written are big and
Yes.
important and very interesting and very, very complex in a very good and interesting and, as you have described, natural manner. This is just you. Have you ever kind of had to stop yourself and ask yourself whether you are overwriting for the piano in chamber music?
This is very interesting question to me because I never write, actually, I never write piano because I want to write for piano. For me, I will write just about any instrument is out there if I find behind this an artist who is available and who is interested. Like if there is orchestra interested, I will be no less enthusiastic about writing for orchestra or writing for chorus that I already did for Nikolai Kachanov, amazing with his amazing Nikolai Kachanov singers. So in that sense, I even want to write something which is not for piano, but life or sometimes it's not sets as we want.
Yeah.
It just piano opens up for me. Uh, I have so many musicians, pianists, and that connections make it possible. So I write music which I know will be performed.
Yeah, like Bach and all the others. You write for what's in Leipzig, you know?
Yes. So in that way, I actually, honestly, I'm looking for the ways to write something for not piano. You know.
So let's talk, if you don't mind, because I want to talk about two things before we start to run out of time. I definitely want to talk about your experience with the clarinet piece, Remembrance. But let's spend a few minutes because we touched on it off camera. Four sonnets of Shakespeare for
Mhm.
soprano and piano. Uh, and it's an interesting story, is it? Working with English language as a second language. How hard was it to put these four sonnets together?
You see, that piece was commissioned to me when I was still studying in New York University, NYU, and from the beginning, for some reason, from both sides, Nika Leoni was an artist who commissioned that piece to me. I don't remember if it was her idea or perhaps my idea, or maybe we both wanted that, but we wanted to write for Shakespeare and the Shakespeare sonnets. And I think it was her idea. And anyway, when I heard this, I was thinking, that's a challenge. It's a huge challenge for me because, first of all, my English is still foreign to me. No matter how well I learn this language, it's not the language I born with,
Yeah.
right? And especially the language that is already forgotten because Shakespearean language is not in present anymore. It might be also foreign for you, although you are native English speaker, because this language is way before we spoke, right? We don't speak this language anymore. So if it is foreign to you, to me, imagine how foreign it is. So, but at the same time, it was interesting to dive into this language and go in that period of time. Go, and that's to me what time machine is about. When we time traveling, you want to travel in the past, listen Bach, and here you go. Read Shakespeare, and that's it. You are there in mid-centuries. And to me, that's always interesting. I wanted to experience that, and it was good opportunity. Of course, difficult. I had to read over and over again, same phrase, same sentence, find translations in Georgian language and Russian language, just to connect to it, connect not to only with meaning, but connect with the phrase itself, the way it's pronounced, the way. So it was the longest project I ever worked on. It took me 3 years just to write these four songs. I mean, it's a long time. It's a long time. I can say that.
Are you better for it?
In English, you mean?
Well, for whatever. Do you, I mean, it's a long time, a lot of work, blood, sweat, and tears. Do you now say to yourself, yeah, it was good. The experience was good.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love every moment of it. It was. It took me that long, not because I decided that way. I never work more or less. I work as much it takes. I cannot finish sooner or
Of
later.
course.
Like I cannot fast forward. Maybe when you watch a movie, you can fast forward because you have this special equipment. But in me, I can't fast forward this. It comes in its own terms, and to make it come, I need to understand what I'm relating to, and those words, we are these thoughts. I have to first understand what these words uh, bring to me, philosophically, beauty-wise, rhythmically, and only then I could expect some musical, language to appear. Because music is language itself.
And in these four songs, sonnets, what I think I'm hearing, so you can now fill me in a little bit. For example, in Sonnet 101, I hear a little sort of jazz lilt. In 111, Sonnet 111, and actually the remaining three, I'm sure I'm hearing something that's kind of like a Georgian folk fragment or something. How close or wrong am I?
No, you are very, very close. Because again, it's what's in me, and that's I cannot do otherwise. Almost in every work, more or less, you will find Georgian folk.
Sure.
Almost in every work. Uh, of course, more or less. Why? Because there are so many other things in me besides Georgian folk that also finds its way into the music, because that's how I speak. But Georgian folk is, of course, takes a major part.
Of course. And it's just part of your DNA. It's part of who you are. You can't, and you don't maybe even recognize that you are using
Yeah,
part
because
of
you
it.
see, it's like an accent. I can learn as many languages as possible, but I cannot get rid of this accent.
Let's talk because I'm starting to run a little bit out of time. I want you to tell me the story of Remembrance for clarinet and piano, 2014, in three sections: Daydream, Dream, and then what's the other? And then Awakening. Hang on, I gotta check something here.
That's right.
Um, tell me about this piece and also your relationship with the clarinetist. Right, you tell me. I just now don't quite have his name handy. But about this piece, because it's speaking of a piece that I couldn't find any, and I heard no clue of anything there. This is just an absolutely magnificent piece for clarinet and piano. Period.
Yeah, that's very special. I mean, every piece is special to me, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't write. Right? It's if it comes out from me, it means there is something so much is happening that it's forced to be out. Otherwise, I cannot do it. And clarinet piece is, of course, in that kind of force. Um, but initial inspiration was, of course, Anton Liszt. And that happened, I think, in 2011 when when my piano concerto was performed. That and was a Juilliard orchestra, musicians from Juilliard. We assembled these amazing artists, and during the rehearsals, I was, of course, listening very carefully, everyone, and then this clarinetist stand out so clearly to me. His intonation was beyond, and I told myself, no matter what happens, but I will have to write something for this artist because I want to hear more of that. And then time passed and some opportunity arose. I don't remember. Something was coming, maybe another concert in Carnegie Hall or something, and I could write a piece for premiere. And I remembered that I could write a piece for Anton Ries, and that's I called him. I remember very well. I called him first. That's what I usually do when I like artists. I call. I ask, would you be able, interested to perform piece if I write for you? If I hear yes, and he told me yes, sure. I remember without even a delay, I put my phone down. I went to write just right away. I was so excited.
And he's a young man still, and
He's
principal clarinetist of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. So you tagged the right person when you heard that the Juilliard Orchestra play. He's magnificent.
magnificent. I'm very lucky. I've been, you know, introduced to so many good musicians. Well, first of all, I'm married to very amazing musician Inga Kashakashvili, pianist for whom I wrote so many compositions, and she appears in so many musical compositions in the disc. She plays with Anton and toccata and cello piece and songs with Naomi O'Connell, who is, I think, amazing mezzo soprano, and she is such an inspiration. And every musician that you find in the disc is in a way touched me, my heart,
Personal.
which very, very personal.
And I had
Yes.
no idea that you two were married. That's very convenient.
Very convenient, although, I do not much emphasize on that, because then it sounds like it's happening because we are married, has nothing to do with our collaboration. I just want to emphasize on that. I see her as an artist, and otherwise it wouldn't happen. That's at least in my situation. I know it wouldn't happen, but again, I'm very, very lucky man.
Yeah, fabulous. Let's see. What have I forgot? What have I forgotten to mention about this CD that you are dying to tell me before we call it an end? Anything? Boy, it's such an incredible performance level.
We talked about a little bit um, the idea of remembrance itself, how it appeared, and why I wrote the piece, what was the reason behind the piece, and I just want to mention briefly that the inspiration is my memories. My the piece itself is dedicated to my grandmother, who I had very close relationship. She was my inspiration at that time, and she still is. And that memories goes to her. That's every time, even today, I remember her so often in my dreams, or whether I'm awakened. And a little bit my life around her was beautiful. And that's what this piece brings into. That's my memories.
It's very, very telling in this piece. This is such a striking piece for clarinet and piano, as we've mentioned. Really should be clarinetists out there. My audience is and by the way, the interview, links to the CD, all that good stuff is going to go up at performingartsreview.net so that people can go and have a browse and have a look and maybe buy the CD. But honestly, professional clarinetists need to look at Remembrance. It is a magnificent piece for clarinet and piano from 2014. It's
So
very accessible, wonderful.
mentioning it, I'm happy you uh, bring this out, because usually, for some reason, that piece doesn't receive that much of attention compared to other pieces that also in the disc. And I think it's a shame, because piece is really,
Very,
to me,
very,
very
yeah,
special.
very important. And also the cello sonata. I mean, the whole CD is just first rate composition. It's just an amazing CD. But the clarinet piece, remember, it's very important. I think people need to have clarinetists particularly need to have a look at this piece. It needs to be performed more. It has that kind of substance. You've just told us why. It's a very intimate and personal piece for you, and the cello sonata and others, the piano pieces for pianists that can play them, because of you.
I think usually that's what makes really work is what artists experience. That's what helped this clarinet piece first place to be born, because what I experienced, in every other pieces that even whatever I write nowadays too, I write only what I experienced. That's the because you see we can be after some historical events. We can be after some great stories that are relevant for many, but it's not necessarily that art will go through it, because art can go through only what you personally experience, because art is your own experience. And if you don't have this experience, then it's going to be just a rational, some kind of form of composition. But it cannot be a living being, A living being is only through experience, and that experience connected to love and emotions, and so other aspects of you are involved in that.
So there is not a single moment, and this rang out loud and clear as I listened to this CD. There is not a single moment of artificiality.
Well, from my side, I can assure that not a single note is there that is there because of some technical virtuosity or because of some harmonic modernity. Nothing ever was that considered by my side. Everything is there because I felt that way, I experienced that way, and I heard that way, first of all.
By the way, that might very well describe your being Georgian somehow. I admire the Georgian people so much during the troubled times. I watched that very closely. And what a proud people, just like the Ukrainians. Ukrainians are such a wonderful and different people so on the planet.
Thank you for mentioning. Georgia is actually very special country. The way the country through historically brings itself up to this world is very special, and it shows in its art, in its folk. Whether you watch Georgian dances, you hear Georgian folk songs, it shows there how much people love art, and they love express themselves through art, So that's correct. Yes.
A good compliment, and we have to end it. We've gone over my limit. I've had a wonderful chat. I hope everybody has enjoyed this conversation with Georgian American composer George Oakley. We have been discussing his world premiere CD, 2018 on Naxos American Classics. It's called Wanderer Chamberworks, and it's the Chamberworks of George Oakley. You have all who have been watching this have heard we've been pretty thoroughly through the programs. A stunning assemblage of incredible chamberworks. Five fabulous chamberworks, and I'll put all of this stuff up. I'll be reviewing the CD also. Put that up in a bit after I get the page up at performingartsreview.net. But what a great pleasure. George, thank you very much for giving me this time in the evening, in your evening, to have a chat with you. Great pleasure meeting you.
And I want to thank you, Dan, for devoting yourself and showing so much interest what's happening today in art. I think this is important for the future of existence itself. It's I must say that what we do, what you do, is won't be passing by. It will be received by future generations.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you very much. And for me, again, I've been a music critic all my life as well as a conductor. But the point is, tackling CD reviews. It's just my little service. It's been around for maybe a couple of years. But what a revelation for me to discover so much incredible music, just incredible music. So it's my great pleasure to try in my small way to let everybody know about it, especially performing artists, so that we can get more music performed. George Oakley, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank
talk
you.
again.